what really is the factor of success is making sure people use it. Certainly in the beginning, if the code's no good, you know, if it's difficult to build, if it doesn't solve a real problem, that is a major factor, major issue. But in the long term, it's the community that means the success of a software project. So in Apache, we tend to have this phrase community first, meaning that we're really concerned about having healthy, vibrant communities. And the code will fix itself in the long term. So what do we mean by this community in a little more detail? A definition of community, really, if you look at it, focuses on things like common ownership. Well, a group of people with common ownership, common values and responsibilities, sharing attitudes, interests, and goals. So we can see that it's people who have customs, who have a way of owning things together, and have shared goals. Another thing I want to add, though, is that community is really a group that communicates. So having a way to communicate, having communication, are the aspects of a community that is important to us. What we're ultimately then talking about really is culture. We're getting really far away from code. You know, we're all talking about software. This is kind of fuzzy to some people, but the culture that you're talking about in your community is important. One thing that we look at in the open source community is different kinds of cultures about basically the way a project's run and the project management. Who's read Cathedral and the Bazaar? Has anyone ever read this book? It's a really good book. You can get the text is available online for free, or you can buy a hard copy. Eric S. Raymond, ESR, was on the video earlier today. And basically, he talked about projects that are run in this cathedral sense, where you have very top-down organization, versus more of a bazaar sense, where you have lots of independent groups coordinating. And different open source communities work differently. So the Eclipse Foundation, or JBoss, tends to have more of a cathedral approach versus the Linux organization. Linux group has more bazaar. So even the open source communities, how they run their culture is very different and very much affects the type of software that they make. So, how do we create these communities? Is what I want to talk about for the next few minutes. We want to have a path to contribution. We want to have a way to get to people to contribute. We want to have a way to move them from here over towards here. So how do we have this path? Well, one thing that we need to do is make it clear. We need to communicate to people. How do you come and join us? We want to invite you. So we need to have a clear, consistent, and attainable message for having people contribute. Because many, many people say, I use the software, but I don't know how to help. I don't know. I don't even know what to do. So if you run a project, you need to communicate this clearly and make sure that the type of things you're asking people to do is simple. They can attain it. There can be lots of things you can ask people to do. You can have people do documentation, bug fixes, answers on mailing lists is a wonderful thing. Having someone who is very active on your mailing list, who just answers people's questions, that is a great contributor. People contribute by creating stickers and running events, promoting it. And other people will donate money if they can, companies or other individuals. One way that I like to tell people to contribute, this is just my experience, is if anyone's ever wondering, how do I get involved? My suggestion is always to start with documentation. If there's some software you want to try out, and you're not sure how it works, so let's say, the other Ben's not in here. He was talking about Tokyo Cabinet is a NoSQL key data store. So I was looking at it recently as well, and some of these other ones. And what I would do when I was looking at it is I would start to take notes as I set it up, the whole process. What did I do to take it set up? What problems did I have? What websites did I have to go to? What worked? What didn't? And then when I have all of those notes, what I end up with is basically a tutorial that I could give to someone else to say, here's how you start this. And I might put that on my weblog, or I might go to the mailing list and say, hey, I started using this software and I had these problems. And giving it back to the community. Had the same thing with another Apache project, another different Apache project I worked on. had a real trouble getting ActiveMQ to work in the new service mix kernel. And so I wrote up all of my problems, and I sent it to the mailing list, and I had all the information. And it was a useful way that we could then create documentation based off of my experience. This is a very simple way to contribute back. It's very useful. So if you run a project, you want to provide this path. You may want to have a page on your website that says how to get involved and list the things they can do. You want to lower the barrier to contribution, so you want to make it easy. Ways to make it easy is obviously have your documentation is a wiki, so it's very easy to make changes. I don't have to have special accounts. I can just come in and add my tutorial very easily. Having a bug tracker, having a good revision control system, like maybe putting your code on GitHub or somewhere like that. And another thing to provide a path is recognize contributors. So in each of your release notes, include a list of the people who helped you, because giving that sort of attribution, giving that merit, will let other people see, one, let other people see, hey, there's lots of people helping out. And two, they know that they get something back from it. They can go to their employer or their friend and say, look, see, I did help with this. And that gives something back to them. So we're going to zip through a little bit here, but I wanted to talk about more specifically on these aspects of community, how do we improve them? On people, one thing, at least in Apache, that we find important is we like to work with individuals. Even if someone may work for another company like IBM or Microsoft or Red Hat, we always try to work directly and talk about working directly as individuals. This means that for any of the Apache projects, the